You know what I think about toiling?
Yeah.
Fuck toiling. Right? Like,
Hey everyone, we're in another episode of AI for Dummies, and we've got a guest here, Boris, and of course Will. So, Boris, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Doing well. So we met a few weeks ago at Design Hotels was hosting an event. So Marco does events for companies, including offsites. So we work with a lot of cool hotel partners. So you were there, and they had a bunch of hoteliers that were kind of mixing, mingling, talking about their various kind of hotels. It was in New York, and you were there, and you were drawing people's illustrations. So towards the end of the night, I was one of the kind of, there's still a group of folks left, and I sat down and we started having a conversation, and you drew an illustration of me, but you also shared a bit about kind of who you were, the fact that the illustration company was actually your business, and it was a great conversation. And we had just started this podcast really kind of maybe a couple weeks, maybe a week or so before that. So I was like, wow, this is really interesting. We have a creative here, an illustrator who, and we talked about AI briefly. And I was like, well, do you want to come on the podcast? And you said, fuck it, why not? And so here we are. So I'd love to just start off by, who are you, Boris? Kind of where do you live? What's your kind of life story?
I came to the U.S. in 1991, in November of 1991, and then like in January or December or something, like just a few weeks later, the Soviet Union collapsed. So the country I am from no longer exists.
Yeah. Wow.
And I lived in New York ever since.
Yeah. So you moved straight from Kiev to
Yes.
New York.
Yeah.
Got it. And you're an illustrator. So how did you get into illustration, kind of art? What was your journey?
So my journey is that as a little kid, I would draw. I would love it. Whoever was around me saw some potential, told me to keep going. Everyone draws when they're young.
That's actually true. Everyone does kind of draw.
Everybody draws, and then at some point
That's interesting.
They get discouraged, or someone tells them to, they're not good enough, so they stop.
Did that happen to you at any point? Did you ever get discouraged?
No. Well, at some point I was a little bit, not sure if this was the right path for me, mostly because I didn't know if I could make it work. Like as a career.
Got it.
But in general, like I was always, I stayed with it. Like I was encouraged the whole way. I think there's a couple of things in my brain that helped me kind of elevate from other people, other artists. But in general, I just kind of like practiced, and
Yeah.
most drawing is like typing. No one's good at it at first. But drawing from life is like a rote memorization kind of skill that anyone can learn.
Yeah.
I think, or most anyone can learn. But anyway, I was always doodling. I was always like asking people, tell me what you want me to draw, and then I would draw it. Continued on. Went to like specialized like public art high schools in art high school in New York. Went to college for kind of conceptual art at Cooper Union, where they beat the illustration out of me.
Really?
Yeah.
What does that mean, conceptual art?
Conceptual art, basically, like they train you for like the Chelsea art scene, like drawing realistic stuff is basically frowned on.
It's like more modern, postmodern.
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 Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Everything has to be like sort of referencing art history. You're supposed to okay, so basically it's the difference between like art as in you draw a pretty picture and art as a philosophy that is tangentially visual, where you are creative and you use whatever tools are at your disposal to create interdisciplinary experiences that may or may not be like art, but you're supposed to kind of, in the modern sense of the word, you're supposed to create an artistic persona and make it original and make it reference everything that came before you and all your contemporaries.
Yeah.
And it could be, if you could make it sell, you could be making a sandwich every day, and that counts.
Yeah.
Hard to describe.
Well, that is going to be
And-
interesting when you talk
Yeah.
about tools and basically
Yeah.
this notion of not just, hey, I'm going to create a picture that looks good
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
accurate, but
And
rather,
but you're saying you that you didn't vibe with that necessarily. That's not.
So I kind of did. The art market is like it's a pretty awesome place, and that's where like a lot of the kind of revolutionary philosophical stuff is happening.
Yeah.
But economically, it's basically, like I always say, that it's a pyramid scheme at the bottom and a money laundering scheme up top.
Well, I've seen the Twitter threads about the laundering schemes up top.
Oh yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
it's like what better way to like launder Russian oligarch money than to just like spend it on some like paintings of like some bullshit artist that you pump up for the sake of like hiding your stash, hiding your money.
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of that going on, and it happens with the very like top of the food chain blue chip artists, and they're the ones making like a tremendous amount of money,
yeah.
and everybody underneath, or most people underneath, are just like kind of struggling. They have to like have kind of like day jobs to make things work, and
Yeah.
or marry rich.
Well, that's the goal.
It's always the dream.
But yeah, after art school, I tried to make it in the gallery scene. It kind of was not working super well. The best thing that I was doing was like self-funding with a buddy of mine, like a creative project where we did like street like art that gathered a good amount of attention, but afterwards, after about 10 years of kind of plugging away at it, I was like, you know what, I have this kind of dead-end day job that pays the
Yeah.
bills. I'm not making art. Let me just dive in, try to make art, and see where it gets me. And that turned into like starting this company where we do artistic services for events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how long ago was that?
Going on almost 10 years.
Wow.
Okay. Wow.
No.
So you were trying. I mean, of a lot of my friends in the art game, or in acting and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
where they're plugging away for a while, and then so for you tangentially moved and you said, cool, let's try out kind of this art for events. Essentially, did it start to work immediately, or how did it?
No. So what happened was I kind of had this epiphany. I needed to quit my day job. I needed to make art. I didn't know how. I knew I was like good at some stuff and I could learn the rest. And then what I wanted to do was political cartoons for newspapers.
That's what we were talking about. I remember. Yeah, we were talking about you want to do political cartoons.
Yeah,
Yes.
But I wanted to.
This
do
is where the politics talk from before the pod, kind of the interest comes from. I see it now.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
That's a whole other.
Yeah.
Can of worms. I wanted to do political cartoons at a time when all the newspapers were going under during the recession, and the first job to get cut was a political cartoonist. So there was just like no work.
So
at
not good
all.
timing for that.
Yeah, and also my leaning is left,
Yeah.
and there's about 9 the breakdown is 9 liberal cartoonists for every 1 conservative.
So it would have been better if you were conservative.
It would be a lot better if I was conservative, because I could get a lot more traction and a lot easier employment. But I'm not gonna like train my brain to like make like Republican talking points into like cutesy cartoons.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a dead end, but.
It's funny how definitely don't want to go down a politics rabbit hole, but it's funny how different mediums have different, like, I didn't know political cartoons lean so far left. I would have had no idea. We were just talking about talk radio leans right, but I'd say podcasts lean left.
Well, it depends on the podcast. So, okay, so you started doing this for events, and then what happened?
So yeah, I was doing a bunch of different things. I was trying to make a living as an artist, and I didn't know how or what. the first like 6 months of being out there was like brutal.
Yeah.
Like really depressing, like burning through my savings, not getting hits, just kind of like begging someone to let me work for them for free almost. And then, my friends saw my political cartoons I was just putting out on like Flickr and stuff. And they, like I was getting kind of good at them. And so someone recommended me to their friend who had like an events business. And I got to do a rich person's party where I drew the guests. And I bombed. I did such a bad job. But it paid, kind of well. And I was like, shit, like I blew my chance to like to draw like, the owner of Guilt,
Oh, wow.
Like Guilt
Yeah.
Group. Like she was at the party.
Yeah.
And she kept being like, no, this isn't good. Do it again.
And it wasn't good though.
It wasn't good. No, I did a bad
It wasn't
job.
just her. It was.
But it like stayed with me. I was like, I could do this.
Yeah.
I know I can do this. I could, I could have this failure as my springboard to my success. And so, I just kind of started it. Wanted to do more events, and then it just kind of grew from there. At a certain point, like, 2 clients wanted me the same day, and I couldn't be there, and I was like, what can I do? I could hire a buddy of mine from art school.
Oh.
And so I went that route, and I realized, it's a terrible idea to hire your friends because they're a bunch of, potheads that won't show up. It'll make you look bad. So I started finding people like, in and around New York, just kind of like finding people whose work I liked, building on that. And also just building out like the range of services that we offer, based on like what I enjoyed doing and what kind of like made the most sense financially, dropping things that didn't work.
Yep.
And over the last couple of years, just kind of turning it into a little bit of an agency where we have artists, calligraphers, and whatever else we're going to do in the next year that I don't even know, in every major market in North America.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, marketing agencies or marketing departments of companies will reach out to us and hire us to do, we just did like 2 big activations all around North America for like Pandora and Miu Miu.
Very
It
cool.
was like a really crazy couple of
And how many people did you have at those?
It was
Because you had a couple people when I was even at the design hotel. Event,
yeah,
I
it
think.
was me and another artist, Anne, who just got married a couple of days ago.
Congrats to Ann.
Congrats to Anne.
Congrats, Dan.
yeah.
Cheers to you, Ann.
Cheers to you. And we had 7 events for Pandora, and we had 7 events for Miu Miu. So like 8 artists total for Miu Miu. It was all just kind of like within like the same, 48 hours kind of thing.
Yeah.
Some most of the time, like we're just sitting around. I'm sitting around answering emails, and then sometimes it's like that Breaking Bad scene where Walter White has to have the Nazis kill like 11 people in 3 jails in 10 minutes.
It sounds intense.
That does sound intense.
It's fun.
So you work in multiple markets. How many folks work kind of on your broader team?
It's tricky because a lot of times we find people for the events that we haven't worked with yet.
Got it.
So a lot of what we're doing right now is just sort of building out our Rolodex, so that we have people we really like that we can call on in those markets.
And they're vetted. So
They're
now
vetted,
you know
exactly. That's we
They don't
have-
pull a you at Guilt Group. They don't pull. They come to the event and
Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
yeah.
And what else? So you're doing drawings of people. You mentioned calligraphy. What would
Yeah.
you be calligraphying?
So a lot of so
I don't know if that's a word, but
Calligraphy-ing. It's bad because my
Calligraphy-ing.
mom calligraphers.
yeah.
Calligraphies.
Calligraphies.
Fights.
Yeah. Sorry, Mom.
So a lot of that. So I don't know. Sometimes it's called marquage. Sometimes it's called calligraphy, or different services. But sometimes for some clients, they want someone in the store to personalize something. It could be a gift. It could be an item that people are buying. So like, someone buys a purse, like a $1,000 purse, and they want like their initials on it. And so it's for, our job to find someone who is really, really great at font, make sure that they're comfortable with the materials, send them out there, and create, beautiful personalization for people who are doing that. So a lot of it is what in marketing is called, activations or experiential marketing, whereby you're basically creating an experience for clients or guests at events, which ultimately endears your clients to the brand.
Yeah.
Because if you create a beautiful personalized memento that for people who will love this item, every time they look at that thing, they see the little branding or they see the item itself, and they remember how great it was for the brand to gift them something like that. So it really, I think that is the.
So would you do stuff in the style of? I've got your Instagram pulled up, and you just saying that makes me think, like the style of this one is different than the style of this one, and. Do you try to match things to the brand? Like, would you get hired and they tell you, we want things to look a certain way if you want personalized drawings of everyone?
So definitely that. You're pointing, right now you're actually pointing to two different things. One is just an artist who is doing their thing. The other is my personal work where I train myself to work in the style of Al Hirschfeld.
Got it. Okay,
who
cool.
is like the
this one right here.
Yeah. So the idea for that was to just like mimic an actual artist as an ask. Like that was the job. The client like asked me if I could do this, and I was like, oh, this sounds really fun. You could like slide through that. This sounds really, really fun.
Oh, that one's cool.
And
that's like Mad Men vibes to me.
Yeah. And Al Hirschfeld is like the guy who did the New York Times, like all the leisure opera theater illustrations for like 100 years. Mm-hmm. So he's like just super famous. I did a crap job mimicking his style, but I got a little close, and so they were super happy with it. That's all that matters. And it was just like a fun assignment for me. In general, my philosophy with my company, Drawn Together NYC, is to, especially for portraits.
Drawn Together NYC, though.
Drawn Together NYC.
Yes.
We're awesome.
Yeah, well, I can attest.
So for our main thing that we do is portraits and fashion sketches. We do them by hand drawing and painting or digitally illustrating guests at events. My philosophy is just to hire really talented artists and let them do what they're great at, which means showcasing individual portfolios and letting clients look at those portfolios and decide if the people that we want to present to them are the right fit for their event.
Yeah.
That way, every artist doesn't have to necessarily be pigeonholed into working in a certain way. They have a little bit of freedom. They're already, we hire really talented people, so they're already really great. We just want to make sure that it's the right fit for the client.
Very cool.
That is very cool.
Let's talk about AI.
Practically zero, my experience. I'm aware of it. I enjoy seeing things that pop up on Twitter about what people are using. Some of the the new stuff coming on like Chat GPT and Midjourney and how people are kind of mixing and matching different little programs are coming on just like in the last few weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
Just creating unbelievable stuff. And, I'm trying to picture where it's going to go and what's around the next corner. A little bit how it affects me, but the most I've done is kind of started asking Bard questions now and then.
Yeah. That's new though, because Bard just recently, that must have been recent. One thing we might do is Al Hirschfeld is maybe do a prompt.
I've already got him queued up. We'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so but I guess
Yeah.
you generally you have used it a bit, but you haven't. You're certainly not.
I'm
you're interested.
generally
You're
aware.
AI curious.
You're in the right place. This is AI for Dummies.
Dude,
Yeah.
I actually
We
want to
are
frame
dummies.
a phrase called AI curious, like bi curious.
Yeah.
AI curious. Like once you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm actually AI curious, and
Yeah.
so I think that is funny.
That is funny.
Yeah.
You're funny, dude. That's a funny comment, man.
Yeah.
AI curious.
AI curious. What's like what's the talk among the illustrators and artists? Like, are people AI curious, or are they kind of shunning it?
They're
Or
AI scared shitless.
yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well-
and how does that manifest? If you talk about it, they're like, don't talk about this? Or what?
So one thing is, a couple months ago, there was that little, brouhaha about how a bunch of artists' work was being fed into a library, and then, basically their work was sort of sampled.
Getty Images was that was one of the instances where the logo was there and you had a bunch of artists that had contributed and they weren't getting royalties, perhaps. I mean, there's a bunch of them. That's the whole concept of it. Generally.
Right. I don't. Yeah, or rather, it was sort of like similar to like Cambridge Analytica. People's artwork was being used maybe under false pretenses, and then it was monetized as like AI generated artwork for clients. So so artists were unwittingly supporting a system that was then being monetized to rip them off.
Yeah.
To work in their style.
Makes sense.
Which is scary as hell.
Yeah.
And there's like a big like boycott AI movement in social media amongst like most of the artists.
Really?
Yeah. Like, yeah, for sure.
Well, there is with the screenwriters, right? Or they're specifically asking.
Oh, I didn't know about the screenwriters.
Yeah.
I knew.
Oh yeah, the whole LA screenwriters, they are on strike, and my friend lives out there. He's an actor, and he's like, oh, they're going on strike. But then part of the ask to the studios was you need to regulate or just fully limit AI because they're screenwriters. So obviously there's a big risk. But it turned into a general strike to I mean, we can pull up some news.
So part of their ask is don't use these language models to help write scripts or something like that. Correct. As the writers.
Correct.
Because I even wonder of the illustrators and in the movie industry, like that seems even more.
Totally.
Like you're seeing these, like we were talking about before it started. Now I'm blanking on who's Wes Anderson. Mm-hmm. Like Wes Anderson movie concepts made with illustrations on YouTube that look exactly like it would be a Wes Anderson trailer, and someone's just run it through Midjourney or whatever to make the different screens.
No.
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
I guess there's two components to it. One is the royalty, what you're mentioning, right? So how are you compensating if you're leveraging someone's work? But Al Hirschford, did you pay Al Hirschford or did you?
I did not.
Exactly, right? So then there's the notion.
He's dead, but
exactly. Well, so is Wes Anderson. So then there's.
Wes Anderson's not dead, bro.
Oh, is he not? Oh, yeah.
No.
We're gonna cut that out.
No, we're leaving that in.
Leave it in.
Yeah.
Okay. But
culture.
But so is Wes Anderson? Would he be getting paid if you did?
No.
That's where it's complex, right? Because I think artists leverage other artists. I think all the time.
All the time.
Exactly.
I think that's the rub of it, and so ultimately I have an unpopular take on this whole thing, in that I think that as good as AI is at mimicking artists, it could still be pretty derivative. The images that are created, they're not original. They're just reflections of, or actually I shouldn't say that. Maybe they will be more original than what I'm seeing. But
yeah,
like who else isn't original? Most artists.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm like, what is originality?
Most artists are just schlocking. Like if most artists that post their work on Instagram are basically just there's zero originality. There's zero even thought. It's just practice. They're practicing. They're putting out their like the same week, like the actress from the Addams Family show, the terrible show on Netflix. Like everyone's gonna draw her. Every artist is gonna draw her. Next month it's gonna be Pedro Pascal. He's gonna have a moment. It's so devoid of any originality, and so now AI is just going to be like.
So you think it might force people to be more original because you're like, well, holy crap, I have to be more original in order to be different from, or I don't know. I mean,
I do, and I think that I mean, I don't. Part of me is like, I don't know what AI has in store for us, and I don't know how much, because technology up to this point, I feel like it was really good at doing, and AI is kind of really good at thinking, and it might be thinking better than people. If it's passing like the bar exam and all the medical exams better than like most humans, like that's not, like it's using some like reasoning, and it's using like the same kinds of like, kind of
processes that your brain works.
That your brain works, only better, right? Because it's like, it's not like maybe it's not going to like make the same mistakes that you would make because you're just a stupid human.
Yeah.
And it's like a super learning machine.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're there yet, but I'm scared we will be.
Next
No,
month.
I know it could.
Like, where were we
It could
2
be.
months ago?
No, I know. But as someone who plays pretty directly with the coding thing, it's good at tricking you into making it look like it's thinking, but it's not actually thinking.
Yeah.
And yet, I say yet because you see it try to reason, you see it talk through, but like as an example, it can't solve a math problem on its own.
Right.
You have to tell it to go step by step and like walk itself
But that
through.
will be solved.
You know what though? I don't know. I don't know if that's entirely true, because like years ago there were like algorithms that you just fed a ton of data into it, like a ton of like math, and then it generated like an answer.
Yeah.
And the people who made the program, they were like, well, this is great, but we don't know what the question is.
Right. This is
Because-
like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah. The AI knows like way ahead
Yeah.
of even the people putting it together.
Yeah. Do you know what that was?
I don't remember, no. But like also like, like recently there was like the stuff like the AI that like creates new food things, like you point it at like your fridge.
Yeah.
And it gives you some like ideas of what to cook.
Yeah.
Well, there's AIs that tell you like brand new food recipes that no one's ever come up with. They're just like, let's put a crunchy thing with like a sweet thing and a tart thing based on.
Sounds kind of weird, but we'll.
Yeah.
It comes up.
It tastes like it?
Yeah.
Have you seen that Friends episode where do you watch?
You're outing yourself that you
Okay.
watch Friends. This is the most embarrassing moment of your life.
Seinfeld. I'm a
Yeah, so
Seinfeld man.
Yeah. Have you gone and taken a picture in front of the owl too? A little selfie.
No, I haven't. But
Oh.
there's an episode where she is making a dessert and then it flips to the wrong page, so she makes like this savory thing in the middle and then goes back to the dessert. And everyone's like, "What the hell are we eating?" And then Joey's like, "This is delicious." So he's like, "Chocolate good, meat
Yeah.
good." Anyway, so
Well, I think through it, maybe when I in my mind cope and criticize is AI really reasoning, more than anything, it's probably putting down human thought of like maybe we aren't actually thinking, and creativity is really drawing two things together. It's the derivative
what I
work
think
to a
about.
certain degree, but it's derivative of you're pulling from two things that haven't ever been put together before. And these models are doing that and being creative because they're pulling different concepts like the sweet and savory together and making something new.
But you have to, as an artist or as any kind of creative person, you have to like have, decades, unless you're like a savant or whatever, like you have to have decades of training in like a specialized education system in order to get to a creative point where you could actually make something original
Yeah.
that will be respected by your peers. And this shit can like pump it out.
that is the
Yeah.
I was wondering where you're gonna go, but that is the craziest part because you just described your schooling and your journey, which was not just multi-year, multi-decade.
Yeah.
Right. So you liked art, you kept up with it, you went to. So that is an interesting
And
concept around.
that's what the AI is being trained on, that whole journey from like a million people.
But that extrapolates not just to art, but to really
Yeah.
so many things.
Everything.
Right.
Well,
Which
it's
is
on AI is on its own journey right now, right? It's in like third grade. It's a prodigious
Kindergarten.
third
I mean,
grader
it's in
or whatever,
kindergarten.
but it's on
It
its
just got-
journey.
It just got promoted early a couple of times.
Yeah.
So okay. So one of the things that we were chatting before this is your analog of photography, basically using a camera as a tool, and how. I mean, I'll let you say it, but I thought that would be an interesting kind of.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, the big question in this room is like, what happens next, right?
Yes.
And it's impossible to predict because, 7 billion people in the world, every 10,000th of them, every 10,000, every 1 in 10,000 people learns to code AI inputs. That's a crazy amount of innovation happening like overnight. Impossible to know where that's going to go. It's probably going to like change everything. I think one thing that it's going to do is bring down the level of entry to everything.
Yeah.
And it's hard to predict where it's going to go and how it's going to impact and revolutionize things. And one way from an art history perspective that I could point to is like, well, what happened when photography came around? Mid 19th century. Like, how did that affect art? The art world. And
how did it? I'm curious.
Looking at history. Well, one thing is, a few things. One thing is like with the like lead artists of that time, the people who were really kind of like, the people that we look to now as like the groundbreaking artists of that time. You look at it, I just saw like a retrospective of Winslow Homer at the Met. It was incredible. Such a just like a tremendous painter, and you see in his in his 30, 40 years or whatever that he was creating these like incredible paintings. I, from this perspective, saw photography and how it impacted him, how it changed what the conversation was. For one thing, and this is from like my college years of like learning about like Manet and doing like a history like term paper on it. The concept of the viewfinder totally revolutionized how artists paint, because you structure the painting completely different when you are basing your artistic composition on peripheral vision, and then you're basing your composition on photos, like using photo references that have a finite little rectangle that they're inside.
Right.
Completely alters the way that you structure a painting. That's to begin with, because like instead of like having like nice little empty space around stuff, all of a sudden you have things cut off.
Yeah.
Someone is like cropped into an image. That shit was not around before photography, because people have
like the Last Supper.
The Last Supper. Everybody's in there.
Cut off. Yeah. Everyone,
Yeah. That doesn't really happen before photography came around, because the concept of a viewfinder, of something getting cropped, got introduced with the introduction of cameras. It's a very subtle thing, but it's gigantic, because it tells artists how to structure the image, which is all that art is.
That is fascinating. Do you feel like there's already something showing up like that with these AI tools, where a picture came along and suddenly things are cropped? No one thought of that in terms of a view. Is there a little thing like that you see in AI that's already changing the way people think about drawing? Or
I'd have to think about it. Yeah. I'm not the most contemporary, like aware person about the art world. Yeah. I'm sure because art in today's world is such an open-ended conceptual question, that anybody who also knows coding has already been messing around with AI and prompts and has generated stuff. There's AI art. There's going to be like AI art museums next week.
What's so interesting? It's mostly like the people who are playing around. Let me ask you a question. How many of your art friends are deep or exploring Midjourney or kind of a generative art tool?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I also kind of, I have my head in the sand a little.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But then you have a lot of folks who are engineers or maybe technically more curious who are doing it. I've actually noticed the best folks, there actually is a lot of like people who are good at generating art with AI as a tool, right? And and so it's prompt generation, but it's also having a keen artistic eye and figuring out what you want.
Yeah.
And so for sure.
What have you seen as the typical person who's good at that?
Design oriented. They they kind of know what they want to see with regards to theme, which will what will look good or be elicit some type of emotional response.
Yeah.
Right? And it may be a reference to like a Wes Anderson you brought up, right?
Yeah.
A reference to, if we were, hey, let's do a podcast, but we're Peaky Blinders actually, and we have certain outfits, but that would be interesting, right? So there's kind of juxtapositions you can do historically, but it's also fine tuning with language actually what you want to see. So it's kind of just having like a good design sense, because what they do is you have to prompt these things with like very specific language, and they're really good at that, and they're good at spending the extra time to learn how to do that. I don't know, is that consistent with what you see?
I wish there was a way to pick out more particular attributes. I mean, that's all generally right. That feels intangible to me.
Because we've tried to do it, and we're not
that good at it. The two of us.
And I actually have good, but they spend.
Yeah.
It's also just an investment of time, I would say.
Yeah, I find people who are on Reddit a lot are good at this for whatever.
But that's a massive. That's a crazy thing to say. There's so many people on Reddit, and the very specific group within that who's probably posting about it happens to be good at it. Yeah. By the way, can you quickly show a couple of examples?
I will. So while you were talking, I threw in AI Hirschfeld, am I pronouncing that right? Mm-hmm. Inspired caricature of Obama. These were 4 options we got back. What do you think?
I think it's totally wrong. But it's completely and utterly incorrect, and but that probably just means someone hasn't thought of putting like Al Hirschfeld's drawing, 1,000 Al Hirschfeld's drawing into the library from which this thing pulls, and they might do that in the next 20 minutes, and this will be way better.
Well, I love your comment about I think it's going to lower the bar, because I think it relates to what you just said, in the sense that experts are always unimpressed because I think they expect.
No, I'm not impressed yet.
That's what he's saying.
No, that's what I'm saying. Are the least impressed because it's like you see this and you know it's not Hirschfeld. Yeah. I see it and I'm like, wow, because to me, I went from a blank page to something. And the same thing is true with the coding ones, where if you actually are a good programmer, you see the function that it gives back to you and you're like, this is terrible. Like, it's not optimized.
Even now, though, you're like, it's actually.
I mean, it's getting better. But if you don't know how to code, you're like, well, now I have this function that does what I wanted, and before I had nothing. So it's lowered the bar of entry into the world.
I mean, is every photo you take good? Taking photos means that you could get to a point where you could take an incredible photo.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're living in
phenomena, right?
Yeah, and the fact that we're living in the age of digital photography, where you could, instead of having to spend money on film and then waiting to get it developed and spending a bunch of money for development, you could have 1 trillion photos in your phone.
You do. That's actually a great analog, because you could be like, oh, because with digital cameras, and especially an iPhone where it's actually pretty good, does that mean that people don't take photographs anymore? Absolutely not. There's a proliferation of not only photographs but all kind of content. And then it actually makes it, because it used to be, oh my gosh, you got to go into a dark room. Think about it. Not so long ago.
You used to have one picture.
Yeah.
You'd all get dressed up and you'd take the.
Oh, I remember going to this terrible mall called Owen Mills, and with my mom and dad, and then we're these nerdy little Indian kids, and they take this photo, and it actually they're hilarious now. They're all over my house. You've seen them.
Yeah, they are great. I thought this one was better. Wes Anderson style portrait of Obama.
Yeah, of course.
You kind of got the colors and the framing right. The top left one's hilarious.
They just put more Wes Anderson stuff into the the library. But can I just quickly just go back to the photo thing?
Yeah.
So on the one hand, there's going to be little kind of more subtle ways in which we see things different.
Yeah.
Right. Just by this new technology. The other side of this is that, what did photography do to the portrait painter? It made them largely irrelevant.
Totally. Yeah.
And up until that moment, portraiture was, for hundreds and hundreds of years, in European art at least, the primary reason for an artist to be and to do. And first, photography comes around, it just totally like probably scares the shit out of every artist available, who does, portraits. And then what happens is photography gets cheaper. And then for a nickel, you can go to, you can go get your picture taken. So then portrait painting, which was the dominant way that artists supported themselves, became a novelty.
Yeah.
Do you view that as a tension between, I've heard the theme a few times of what you've said of like accessibility is lower. Now anyone can create this. Do you feel like there's a tension of like snobbery around where, okay, well, it used to be you'd had to have an expensive camera. Yeah. And so only photographers took pictures. And now everyone can take a picture. Yeah. And arguably pictures are way better now than ever, but everyone can do it. And so it feels less, like, is there like a gatekeeping almost feeling in the art community?
By the way, as you answer that, as we round out, could you do a little drawing?
Of course.
And it could be of whatever, really. But snobbery was the question.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to point that question more specifically. But to me, it feels like, now you can go and get a picture taken for a nickel. And that feel like to an artist, it's like, well, that's not art because it's just a nickel, right? But the accessibility of it is better. But there's an undertone almost of like gatekeeping and snobbery to me of an art world of like, I trained as an artist and I can make XYZ painting and now anyone can. And so that's sort of that's what's gone. Now AI can.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you have like the screenwriters, like them, the most like, creative, like clever people who get paid well and like are, it's a super selective industry of people. This super selective like group of people are begging the studios not to basically just go to an AI program to replace them. Yeah. I mean, I think like you could be as snobbish as you want, but like basically what I think is going to happen is something that cost $1 billion is going to cost $10,000.
That I agree with.
So like Tom Cruise jumping out of an airplane, in a Mission Impossible movie, and getting like $80 million for that like year of his life, or more, or whatever. Guess what? You could pump out a Tom Cruise script, right, from an AI from one program.
Yeah.
You could face swap Tom Cruise.
Have you seen that video?
Oh yeah, I've seen that video, and the Arnold Schwarzenegger, like face swaps. They're amazing.
Diesel got paid tens of billions of dollars to do the voice of Groot in Guardians of the Galaxy. Straight up, Vin Diesel got paid that much to do the voice of a tree. Yeah, like millions of dollars. Yeah. And so to your point, that's not going to happen anymore. Yeah.
But like, remember when the Irishman came out?
I don't.
The Irishman, like
the long movie.
The long movie. Yeah. So what happened was The Irishman came out. It was like the most expensive movie Scorsese's ever made. It was on Netflix. It was like the most expensive thing Netflix ever put their money in. They de-aged, De Niro and Pesci for these roles where they were like in the 50s, and it looked stupid. And then the movie came out, and then somebody used a de-aging like app basically to make like De Niro look like the De Niro in the Goodfellas, where they just trained it on like a 30-year-old De Niro movie. Yeah. And it looked 100 times better than what Netflix spent probably like tens of millions of dollars on.
On makeup and stuff.
No, on de-aging.
Oh, on the aging.
No, before they use that, and then
got it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Like that's why like Avatar looks stupid as hell. Yeah. Because James Cameron spent like a decade developing this technology that just for himself for this movie, while like somebody in their basement made something better like in a few months.
I mean, I always find watching older movies that like E.T.
Yeah.
Or Shark. What's the name? What,
Jaws.
Jaws.
Shark,
dude. Jaws. Like you watch Jaws now, and you're like, "That's what a."
Well, so maybe I know we're getting to close to time here. So one thing that I was thinking about was I could have an illustration that looks like me,
Yeah.
comes out immediately from Midjourney or whatever it is. But we met and we had a conversation, and I think that made me care about it more. And that's just if someone gets you. I mean, you use the analogy in the first podcast around like a bottle of wine. You can just go get something shipped, but if there's a human involved, or if this is
We
this
love
is
stories.
illogical, but
Humans
people
love stories.
that I can be like, I went to the Renaissance Fair and I got my photo. So how do you think about? But I don't know if that's always the case. You actually, but maybe in certain instances. But how do you feel about like the concept of humanity being involved in the creation of art?
So, whoa. That's whoa. Let's take a step back.
Yeah. I only had one cup of coffee, bro.
So yeah, exactly. So there's a couple of in my own personal experience. There's a couple ways to answer that question. I think one is I don't think what we're doing, like when I sketched you at an event, I don't think that's necessarily going anywhere because people do like we do live events, right? The whole point is for you to go to a party or an event or whatever, and for that event to have like a really interesting, fun, artistic thing.
It's live. It's experience. Yeah.
And it could be like us. It could be something else. It could be like a performer. But what we're doing there is adding something to the live event experience.
Correct.
I don't think that's going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Because I just don't. However, oftentimes when we go to these events, we're right next to a photo booth.
Yes.
And the photo booth is a perfect
AI photo booth. That's gonna be
right. Like within the last year, there's like a
that's
new.
a good idea actually.
Yeah, but like, who cares, right? Because like you could just do like an AI photo booth on your phone.
Yeah.
And like within the last year, there's like a new thing where they do like a spinning camera thing.
Oh yeah. I just went to a wedding.
Yeah.
Novelty, but it's fun.
So it's a new novelty that's going to revolutionize, the selfie photo booth for that year or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that like that is going to be, an AI thing is going to help with the next phase of that.
Yeah.
Because ultimately all you need is like a tech guy to like go to the event, bring the hardware, make sure things are wired and set up to the Wi-Fi, and then like with dead eyes, just sort of like take photos of people, maybe give them some props.
Yeah.
So that's going to maybe their thing is going to be like updated, but our thing I think it's a little bit too separate. And I think that maybe some of the studio illustration that we do is gonna disappear because
Or the calligraphy maybe for the handbags. Or
no, because that's
I
also a
disagree with
physical
that.
thing.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
the you want the texture. You don't just print a wedding invitation versus getting a calligrapher. Like you could already
even if it looks
print.
the same. Do you want? I mean,
like
want that.
you print it because it costs less, right? But like if you choose the calligraphy because it's nicer, right? Like we have the tech now. You could do calligraphy invitations and people pay for the calligraphy. I mean, you could have calligraphy style printed.
That's what I
is my
mean.
point, right? And people choose calligraphy for a reason.
Because of the human element, you think?
Well, in that case, I think the quality of it, the texture, the.
But what if it looked exactly the same?
But it doesn't though,
Really?
It doesn't. I mean, you know better than me, but it's different. Like you can tell it was calligraphy.
like versus printed calligraphy font.
Yeah.
I mean, the best calligraphers will make it look like a calligraphy font. but it is about. I mean, anybody can just print a card like in store. You type in the message and it just prints it out. Having like the actual painter in there, like laboriously doing it, it's part of the experience. It is an experience of the moment.
Yes.
I don't think that's going to go anywhere.
Every piece of art that I've paid like a decent amount of money for, it's someone that I know who or like have met or like give a shit about in terms of.
Biff, this is giving me a weird vibe though of what you just said of like where was the human labor, the toil. For some reason it makes me think of I was at this diner in Maine one time. We were all having brunch. There's a group of 10 of us, and the waitress. I promise this relates. the waitress went around, and for everyone who ordered their breakfast, so I got an omelet, she asked, would you like uncaged eggs for $1 more? And which is an odd question. Like, just
They probably taste better though.
yeah, but I'm not going to sit there and say I prefer the caged eggs. Like, everyone took the $1 more, but it's a little bit of like, you know what? I did want my chicken to suffer a little bit. I wanted him to work a little harder. Like, I actually want the toil egg. That, like, for what you guys just said reminded me of that. Like, you know what? I want my art. I wanted someone to sweat
Right.
for me to get my piece of art. But there is
Yeah.
something
But they also
about
get compensated for that. It's a job. Right.
that. Well, we hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
We hope they get compensated.
Anyways, on that
Well,
note,
hang on. I have one
Okay.
more thing. If you have a few extra minutes, 'cause
Sure, of course.
the photography, back to like kind of the boycott AI comment at the very beginning, and then your photography point. Are you aware that was there a boycott movement of photography at any point?
There's a boycott movement of every new technology.
Yeah.
Always.
So
of
there
course.
was.
The Luddites. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
Do you
course.
think that it's different
I mean,
this time?
like you know what I think about toiling.
Yeah.
Fuck toiling. Right? Like the whole point of life is to not make it miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, why spend 10,000 hours on something that could take 10 minutes?
That is a banger of a statement.
Yeah. Fuck toiling.
Well, I mean, fuck human toil.
Yeah.
Like why do you need to learn? And why do you need to learn? Why do you have to be an expert in something when you could just go to the AI? Go to like an app and let it give you a shortcut.
Yeah.
It's all about shortcuts, right? It's like,
And then maybe you could spend your energy doing something else. I guess that's the positive thing.
yeah, more leisure, or more like depression. I don't know.
Or more creation. I mean, the benefit is like, okay, cool. Humans naturally.
Well, that's the thing. I think there's just like the lowered bar of entry will mean that it's not that. I think there's just going to be way more art.
Yeah, there certainly will be.
It's going to be created by a machine, like you
With
don't
the human that's guiding it, perhaps. Right?
Or not.
Or not.
yeah, or a clever app that you pay pennies to, and it like generates like a beautiful logo for your business that maybe like the artist that you would hire would have done like a shittier job.
Yeah.
And it's like, sorry, guy, like, figure out your next step. Like, be creative. And being creative is really, really tough. It's the toughest thing. And it should be the toughest thing. It shouldn't be like 10,000 hours of creating an artwork that, like, I look at like all that like super realistic, like people like, like toiling to create like a photorealistic artwork. It's like, why? That's such a waste of your energy and time.
God, that's so interesting. Yeah, it does.
That's my personal.
Yeah, it feels like there's like this hazing mentality built into humans of like, well, I did it, so you have to do it. Right? But that's always existed. Like our grandparents, like, I carried the bucket of water.
Yeah, I walked up the hill both ways to school.
Yeah, and I even hear people now say, "Oh, our kids will never learn how to drive." Like, what a shame. It's like, dude, cars have existed for 80 years, 100 years. Like, who cares? Like, and then we'll be back to not driving.
100 years. 100 years ago, like 80% of the country was farmers, and now it's like 1%.
Yeah.
1,000 years ago, like land was super cheap and food was really expensive.
Yeah.
Like let's go with progress. Let's hope it doesn't
That's really
destroy us.
Okay, so on that note, this is a fascinating episode.
Really cool. Yeah. Thanks for your time.
Sure. Thank you guys.